What's more American than a cheeseburger?
American food is often associated with hot dogs and burgers, but there's plenty more where that came from. Here are the top 10 foods that built America.
You're in America, okay? Greatest country on the planet.
Hot dogs.
Hot dogs.
Nothing quite says summer like having a good old hot dog. Whether it's at a picnic with your friends or family, or at a baseball game, a hot dog is just the thing to elevate the mood. But the thing about the hot dog is that we don't really know where it came from. There are plenty of stories, though. One states that the name came from a newspaper cartoon illustrated by a man named Dorgan. As the legend goes, Dorgan observed a vendor selling the hot dachshund sausages during a game at the New York Polo Grounds and shouting, "Get your red hot dachshund sausages." Dorgan illustrated this scene with a dachshund dog nestled in a bun with the caption, "Get your hot dogs." The thing is, no one has ever been able to find a copy of this cartoon. Was it lost to time, or did it even ever exist in the first place?
It only does hot dogs?
No, and a not hot dog.
While that is one of the more popular versions of the story, the truth is that hot dogs can be traced to German immigrants in the 1800s. German immigrants brought not only the sausage to the U.S. with them in the late 1800s, but also dachshund dogs. Hot dog historians say the name hot dog may have begun as a joke about the German small, long, thin dogs. While this food's origin might be lost to time, we can all agree that hot dogs are delicious and an American staple.
Made out with a hot dog. Oh my God, that was one time!
Apple pie.
Did somebody say pie?
Nothing is quite as American as apple pie. Whether bought from the store, the local bakery, or made by Granny, we can all agree that apple pie is the best way to warm up after a long, hard day. But while we all associate apple pie with America, did you know that it didn't actually originate here? So where did it come from?
I'm an American! Apple pie!
Well, the first written apple pie recipe traces back to England. It was written in 1381, and it includes apples, figs, raisins, pears, and a pastry shell. On top of that, there's evidence that apple pie wasn't just invented there, but some form of it exists all over Europe. For example, evidence of Dutch apple pie goes back to the 1600s. For those of you wondering, Dutch pies include lemon and cinnamon and sometimes raisins and icing. The French also invented tarte tatin, which was created by accident when a hotel owner by the name of Stéphanie Tatin was trying to make traditional apple pie in the 1880s. So while we've all heard the phrase, "as American as apple pie," that might not actually be true. But because America is where so many cultures come together, we're not surprised that apple pie ended up as a U.S. treasure, even if it was invented somewhere else.
Where did you get that pie?
Windowsill.
Buffalo chicken wings.
I'll whip up some chicken wings, you know, with the hot sauce that makes our faces numb.
While deep-fried chicken wings have been a staple of Southern cooking for as long as we can remember, they weren't always the hot, peppery kind. The person who thought that one up was none other than Teresa Bellissimo, a co-owner of the Anchor Bar in Buffalo, New York. Legend has it that one night Teresa cooked leftover wings and hot sauce as a late-night snack for her son and his friends. They loved them so much that the Bellissimos put them on the menu the next day. This brand new dish was served with celery slices and blue cheese sauce, and soon enough, people far and wide wanted a taste of these buffalo wings.
You're just trying to get that last chicken wing.
How dare you?
Eventually, Dick Winger, a hot sauce salesman, went on the road with Teresa's son, Dominic. They were trying to promote buffalo wings and sell hot sauce, and the recipe gained more and more popularity. The buffalo wings status was cemented in 1990 when McDonald's began selling its Mighty Wings. A year later, KFC was rolling out hot wings, and a few years after that, it was Domino's Pizza's turn. Say what you will about buffalo chicken wings, but they are hot, hot, hot. And it seems as though everyone wants a piece of them.
Hey, where are our chicken wings?
Show me chicken wings!
Tater Tots.
Tater Tots? All right!
Everyone knows these nuggets of potatoy goodness, but where did they come from? Well, the origin for this cafeteria classic began in the early 1950s. Two brothers, Neffy and Golden Griggs, had been working on their family's farm. While they'd made their money selling corn and potatoes, the brothers decided to take a risk and break into the frozen food industry. They mortgaged their land to buy a flash freezing plant. The factory, which was located on the border of Oregon and Idaho, was the inspiration for the name of this new company, Ore-Ida. There was big money to be made in quick-cooking French fries, and the brothers knew it. But they soon encountered a problem. Their machinery had trouble separating the nicely cut fries from the weirdly shaped defects. This meant that they were producing lots of irregularly shaped potatoes, which definitely couldn't be sold as French fries.
Pauline, give me some of your tots.
No, go find your own.
What would they do with them? At first, they did what most farmers would do with scraps. They fed it to the livestock on their family farm. But the brothers wanted to know if there was something else they could do with their oddly shaped potato scraps, something that would turn a profit. So they smashed them together to form small, bite-sized nuggets, and the Tater Tot was born.
Tater Tots are my salvation.
Meatloaf.
Hey, Ma! Can we get some meatloaf?
Meatloaf. Whether it's prepared by your mom or you get it from a random diner, who doesn't love a good loaf of meat? But where did it all begin? The first recorded recipe for meatloaf as we know it is from the late 1870s. The book instructed the cook to finely chop whatever cold meat you have. That meat would have likely been beef because people often slaughtered their cows before winter and tried to take full advantage of every last bit of meat. The meatloaf provided a great way to make use of those leftover cuts.
This beats all other meatloafs.
On top of the cold meat, they added pepper, salt, onion, slices of milk-soaked bread, and egg. If you've ever made meatloaf, you might be shocked to see that the recipe has managed to stay virtually the same for centuries. But there is one difference. Back then, meatloaf wasn't for dinner, it was for breakfast. Once industrial-scale meatpacking took off, meatloaf was elevated to a whole new level. This is because meatpacking created plenty of scraps, which is precisely what you need for a meatloaf. During the Great Depression, meatloaf became a staple of many Americans' diets because it helped home cooks extend precious protein farther than it might otherwise go. Since then, it has stayed as an American staple, and it will continue to be so for centuries to come.
Is it done yet?
Your meatloaf will be ready in 8 seconds, Homer.
Reuben Sandwich.
I left half a Reuben sandwich in here. I have no idea where it is.
The Reuben Sandwich is a grilled American sandwich made up of corned beef, Swiss cheese, sauerkraut, and Russian dressing. Whether you're making it at home or shoveling it down during your lunch break, it's easy to see why these things are classics. But like many other foods on this list, the Reuben Sandwich has a few origin stories. One of these stories is told by the Kulikovsky family. Legend says that the sandwich was invented by none other than Reuben Kulikovsky, a Jewish Lithuanian-born grocer residing in Omaha, Nebraska. One day at his weekly poker game held in the Blackstone Hotel, Reuben asked for a sandwich made of corned beef and sauerkraut. A chef named Schimmel made it for him, adding Swiss cheese and Thousand Islands dressing to his order, putting the whole thing on rye bread.
You bought up Reuben's painting. Not a painting, a sandwich.
After realizing that it was a good combination, Schimmel put it on the Blackstone's lunch menu, and its fame spread when a former employee of the hotel won the National Sandwich Idea Contest with the recipe. Another story states that it wasn't Reuben Kulikovsky who invented the sandwich, but rather Arnold Reuben, a German-Jewish restaurant owner. He lived in New York City, and according to stories, Reuben created the Reuben Special around 1914. There's plenty of other stories, but the fact remains that once a type of food gets popular, everyone wants to claim its invention. Whatever the truth, the Reuben Sandwich remains a classic for a reason.
The classic corned beef and sauerkraut on rye. Reuben. Oh, I like that.
Barbecue ribs.
We eat ribs and whatnot and listen to salsa music. You see where I'm coming from?
Barbecued ribs are an early 20th century innovation driven by the rise of industrial meat packing, mechanical refrigeration, and commercial barbecue stands. Before mechanical refrigeration and railroad transport, people didn't eat meat year-round because there was no way to keep it from spoiling. Farmers had to wait until the first cold winter weeks to slaughter their pigs. It needed to be cold enough, below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, for the carcass to cool quickly and not spoil, but also not so cold that the meat would freeze. The hog slaughter entailed a huge celebration, and almost every part of the animal was put to use.
One rib.
One rib.
I sure am hungry.
Friends and neighbors were invited over, and they would dine into the night. As technology advanced, people got more access to ribs, and industrial pork packaging rose in the early 19th century. The only issue was that the pig's spare ribs didn't fit into the barrels, which meant these factories had plenty of unwanted spare ribs. It was said that during the hog slaughter season, you could go to a slaughterhouse and receive free spare ribs. But as refrigeration became more commonplace, people were able to have spare ribs year-long, which meant that they had more time to experiment with recipes. In the early 20th century, barbecued ribs started popping up all over the country, and the rest is history.
You know what a sociopath is?
Do they like ribs?
Biscuits and gravy.
Ain't nothing wrong with a little biscuit and gravy.
Biscuits and gravy were invented in southern Appalachia in the late 1800s. Because lumber was one of the main industries, the recipe was ideal for cheap, calorie-dense fuel to keep the workers' energy and spirits up. The biscuits used were called beaten biscuits, and they got their leavening and smooth texture from being vigorously beaten and folded. These biscuits eventually became too much effort to make, so in 1877, a machine was invented to make them instead. This machine single-handedly saved beaten biscuits from extinction and made them smoother, prettier, and even more popular than before.
Every morning he'd wake up at dawn and make us biscuits with gravy.
A few years later, baking powder and baking soda became commercially available with increased availability of flour, which meant that the biscuits underwent yet another freshen up. At this point, people were able to make a pretty good biscuit. So why is it always paired with gravy? Gravy is made from sausage, pan drippings, flour, and milk, many of the things that were available after the American Revolutionary War. Biscuits and gravy have been linked ever since.
It's biscuits and gravy. You can't have one without the other.
Grits.
I can do grits.
Grits is another classic, and it's been a staple for centuries. It was first introduced by Native Americans in the 16th century who were already eating soft, mashed corn. This recipe was first introduced to European colonizers in 1584. One evening in North Carolina, Sir Walter Raleigh and his men dined with local Native Americans, and one of the men wrote of the very white, fair, and well-tasted boiled corn that was served to them. That dish was called rockahominy by the Native Americans, which was then shortened to hominy by the colonizers. This dish was then offered to settlers in Virginia, and they liked it so much that the Native Americans taught them how to make the dish.
What's this over here?
You never heard of grits?
Once they learned, it quickly became a part of the American diet. Grits grew in popularity, and within a few years, it became a tradition for nearly every southern state, especially South Carolina. Grits are made using stone-ground corn, or hominy, boiled and mixed with butter and milk, and often served with shrimp. That being said, there are plenty of other variations that are just as good.
Well, kiss my grits.
Hamburger.
This is a tasty burger.
Last but certainly not least is the hamburger. Truly, nothing could be more American than a well-made burger. And the best part? There are plenty of options. Traditional, gourmet, fast food, sliders with bacon. The list of variations and toppings are infinite. And there are plenty of places that are willing to serve this dish, whether it be at McDonald's, a fancy dining room, or your local diner.
They'll be craving these burgers, itching to get their fix.
The hamburger first appeared in the late 19th century, and the modern hamburger emerged due to a few things. During industrialization, society was changing rapidly. Both the middle and working class emerged emerged, which resulted in the demand for mass-produced, affordable food that could be grabbed on the go. There is considerable evidence saying either the USA or Germany, specifically Hamburg, was the first country to create the hamburger. At the end of the day, does it truly matter where it came from? What matters is where it's going, which is into the mouths of thousands of people every single day. And that, our dear audience, is where the hamburger thrives.
Many experts believe the burger to be a gift from a more highly advanced civilization from beyond the stars.
Bite into more great videos. Just tap or click. First time here? Then leave us a comment, hit that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell.